The marketplace was loud, filled with shouts, bargaining voices, and the clanging of cages. Merchants cried out their offers, holding strange alien creatures, some strong, some beautiful, some rare. But in the last cage, at the edge of the dirty market, sat a thin, alien girl, her body weak, her skin covered in dust, and her eyes empty of hope. The auctioneer, a fat alien with 3 eyes, slammed his staff on the ground. "Who will take this one? She is small, useless, cannot work, cannot fight, cannot even sing. A burden, nothing more." The crowd laughed, sharp voices mixing with cruel words. "Throw her away! Feed her to the scavengers," one shouted. "She is worth less than a broken tool." Another added. The girl lowered her head, too tired to argue, too broken to care. She had heard these words many times before, from her own family, from strangers, from everyone who saw her as nothing. The auctioneer tried again. "1 credit, just 1. Take her off my hands." But no hand was raised. The aliens around the cage turned their backs, busy chasing after prettier slaves, stronger warriors, or smarter traders. Minutes passed. The heat of the suns burned the ground. Dust rose into the air. The girl coughed softly, her body shaking. She knew this was the end. If no one bought her, they would throw her into the wasteland, where vultures circled and waited for the weak. The auctioneer growled in anger. "Useless. Even for free, no one wants her." He lifted his staff to smash it on the cage, as if to end the sale and her fate together. Then, a new voice cut through the noise, calm but strong. "I will take her." The marketplace fell silent. Dozens of eyes turned, and there he was, a human standing tall among the aliens. His clothes were simple, dusty from travel, but his gaze was sharp, steady. His face carried no mockery, no disgust, only something the girl could not understand. The auctioneer blinked, confused. "You? A human? You want this worthless thing?" The human nodded once, his voice clear. "Yes, how much?" The crowd erupted in laughter. "Humans are fools," one alien shouted. "He throws away his credits for trash." Another howled. The auctioneer smirked, thinking he had won. "1 credit, human, and she is yours. Though even then, I think you are wasting your money." Without hesitation, the man reached into his pouch and placed the coin on the table. The sound of it striking the wood was louder than the crowd's mocking laughter. The cage opened with a rusty creak. The girl lifted her head, weakly staring at the human. Her heart beat faster. She could not understand why. The auctioneer shoved her forward. "Take her, human, but don't come back crying when she slows you down." The girl stumbled, almost falling, but the human caught her by the arm. His grip was steady, not cruel, not harsh. He helped her stand. For a moment, their eyes met. Her eyes, filled with fear and shame, met his, calm and unshaken. The crowd jeered, but the human ignored them, turning and walking away, guiding her gently through the dust and laughter. The girl's legs trembled, her voice weak as a whisper. Why would you take me? I am nothing." But the man said nothing, only placed his cloak over her shoulders as the suns burned above. The vultures circled high in the sky, disappointed that they would not feast that day, and the marketplace slowly returned to noise, unaware that in that small, quiet moment, everything had begun to change. The market noise faded behind them, but the girl still heard the cruel laughter echoing in her mind. Her bare feet dragged across the hot ground as the human led her away. His steps were steady, silent, unlike the other buyers who always shouted or pulled their slaves harshly. She kept her head low, waiting for the moment he would tighten his grip, demand something, or strike her for slowing down. But instead, his hand remained firm yet gentle, guiding her forward without a word. The silence made her more afraid than the laughter had. What did he want from her? Why waste even a single credit on someone like her? Finally, when they reached the edge of the marketplace, the girl dared to whisper, her voice thin and broken. "Why? Why me? You could have chosen anyone. Stronger, prettier, useful." The human glanced at her, his eyes calm, unreadable. "Because you were left behind," he said simply. His words made her chest tighten. She could not tell if he meant pity or something else. No one had ever cared about the one left behind. They walked further, leaving the noise of merchants and cages far away. The path ahead led toward the barren hills, where the suns cast long shadows. The girl shivered under his cloak. Even though the heat still burned, her body was weak, but her thoughts spun wildly. What if he bought me only to use me for cruel work, she wondered. What if he only wants me as a toy, like the others wanted? Her fear grew heavier with every step. At last, her legs gave out. She stumbled and fell into the dust. The human stopped immediately, kneeling beside her. His hand brushed the dirt from her arm. Not rough, not angry, just careful. Can you walk? He asked, his voice low but steady. She nodded quickly, afraid to anger him. But her body trembled too much to rise. He didn't yell. He didn't leave her. Instead, he lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. His strength shocked her. No alien who had called her worthless had ever carried her this way. She stared at his face as he carried her, his jaw set, his eyes forward. His silence was strange. Not cruel silence, not cold silence, but something else, something she could not name. When they reached a shaded rock, he set her down gently and handed her a flask. Drink, he said. Her hands shook as she took it. She smelled clean water inside, pure, not mixed with dirt or poison like she sometimes received. Still, she hesitated, eyes narrowing in suspicion. Why? Why give me this? The human leaned back against the rock, watching the horizon. Because you need it. That was all. No demand, no price. Her throat burned with thirst, so she drank deeply, water spilling down her chin. She had not tasted such freshness in many suns. When she finished, she clutched the flask to her chest, almost afraid he would take it back. But he didn't. The silence stretched again, broken only by the wind across the barren hills. The girl's eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. She could not understand this human. Aliens had always traded her, mocked her, called her trash. Her own family had abandoned her for scraps of food. But this man, he spent a credit on her when no one else would. He gave her water, his cloak, even carried her when she fell. She whispered again, almost to herself, "Why save me? I am nothing." The human finally looked at her, his gaze steady. His answer was quiet but sharp like a blade. "You are not nothing." Her heart skipped a beat. She stared at him, unable to believe those words. And though the vultures circled high above, though the marketplace was still filled with cruel laughter far away, something inside her began to change. For the first time in her life, she wondered if she might truly be worth more than nothing. And the man, silent and unshaken, kept walking beside her, as if his choice had already been made, long before she even asked. The suns dipped lower in the sky, casting long red shadows across the dusty hills. The human walked ahead with steady steps, while the alien girl followed behind, her small feet dragging across the cracked earth. Every step felt heavy to her, not only because of her weak body, but because of the questions that burned inside her. Why was this human helping her? What did he really want? The cloak he had placed on her shoulders was too big, dragging against the dirt, but it was warm. It carried his scent. Dry earth, iron, and smoke. A strange smell, yet not unpleasant. She clutched it tighter, though in her heart she still believed this kindness would not last. The path grew narrow, winding between rocks and thorn bushes. The silence between them stretched, broken only by the sound of their footsteps and the distant cry of vultures. Finally the girl whispered, her voice trembling. Where are you taking me?" The human slowed but did not turn. "Home," he said simply. The word struck her like a stone. Home, a word she once knew, but that had long since been stolen from her. Her family had sold her, the world had abandoned her, and the market had called her worthless. "Home?" she repeated softly, almost bitterly. "I have no home." The man stopped then, turning to face her. His eyes were calm, but his words were firm. "Then you will have one now." Her chest tightened, but fear returned just as quickly. No one gave something without a price. What would his price be? The wind picked up, carrying dust. She pulled the cloak over her face, coughing weakly. The human stepped closer, shielding her with his own body until the gust passed. He looked down at her. "You are weak. You need food, water, rest." His words sounded practical, almost cold, yet in them was something she had never heard before. Concern. They continued walking, the land slowly changing from dry rocks to a softer valley. In the distance, she saw a small shelter made of stone and wood, smoke rising faintly from a chimney. Her legs shook as they neared it. Her fear only grew stronger. What awaited her inside? When they reached the door, he pushed it open. The air inside smelled of herbs and cooked grains, simple but warm. The girl froze in the doorway, her hands clutching the cloak. Her heart raced. She had entered many homes before. As a servant, as property, as less than nothing. Would this be the same? The man set down his pack, then gestured toward a chair. "Sit," he said. She obeyed slowly, sitting on the edge of the chair as if it might break under her weight. Her eyes scanned the room. A small table, shelves of tools, jars of dried food, a bed in the corner. Everything looked ordinary, human. Then he placed a bowl of food in front of her, steaming and fragrant. Her stomach twisted painfully, hunger roaring inside her, but her hands stayed still. She looked up at him with wide, suspicious eyes. "Why?" she asked again, her voice breaking. He sat across from her, his expression calm. "Eat. You are safe here." Safe. The word echoed in her mind, almost unbelievable. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the spoon. She tasted the food, warm and soft, filling her empty body with strength. Tears slipped from her eyes before she could stop them. She tried to hide her face, ashamed of her weakness, but the human said nothing. He simply watched, silent, steady, as if her tears did not make her smaller, but stronger. When the bowl was empty, she whispered once more, "Why me? Why do all this?" The human leaned back, his gaze steady. His voice was quiet but unshakable. "Because no one else did." The words hung in the air like a promise. For the first time in her life, she felt the faint spark of something new. Not fear, not despair, but hope. And thighs. But the world outside still called her worthless. In that small home, in that moment, she began to believe she might finally matter. The small shelter was quiet as the suns finally sank behind the hills, leaving only the soft glow of firelight. The alien girl sat near the wooden table, her thin fingers curled around the edge of the cloak he had given her. The warmth of food still lingered in her belly, but her heart was restless. She had been fed, given water, even allowed to sit in safety. But she did not trust it. Nothing came without a price. The human moved around the room with calm steps, setting tools back on shelves, stirring the fire, and checking the doors. He said little, only quiet words to himself. Yet she felt his presence heavy in the room. Her eyes followed him carefully, waiting for the moment he would reveal his true reason, waiting for the demand, the cruel order she had heard too many times before. Finally, he set down a small blanket on the floor beside the fire. "You can sleep here," he said. The girl blinked in confusion. "On the floor?" she whispered. The human nodded. "It will be warm by the fire. Tomorrow we will find you better clothes." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She had expected a chain, a command, a cage, but instead, he offered her rest. She lowered herself onto the blanket, her body tense. She pulled the cloak tightly around herself, listening to the crackle of the flames. The man sat at the table, sharpening a blade. The sound of stone against metal echoed softly. She watched the sparks fly, fear pricking her chest. Her mind whispered lies to her. Maybe he is waiting until I sleep. Maybe the blade is for me. Her body trembled, and she turned her face toward the fire, pretending not to watch. Minutes passed, long and heavy. The fire popped. The wind moaned outside, and the man finally set the blade aside. He stretched, then stood, walking toward the small bed in the corner. She flinched as his steps drew near, but instead of stopping by her, he sat on the bed, pulling off his boots with a tired sigh. He lay back, one arm across his chest, his breathing slow, steady. He closed his eyes. The girl stared at him, frozen in disbelief. He had left her free, untouched, unchained. Her throat tightened. She whispered into the cloak, barely audible. "Why save me? I am nothing." Her words drifted in the silence, carried by the crackling fire. The man's eyes opened slightly, catching the glow of the flames. His voice came, quiet but clear. "You are not nothing." Then he turned, closing his eyes once more, leaving her with those words. The girl lay on the blanket, staring at the firelight dancing across the walls. Her heart pounded, not from fear now, but from something new, something she could not name. The cloak smelled of him, strong and steady. The warmth seeped into her bones, easing the ache of the long day. But her mind refused to rest. She thought of her family's mocking voices, of the crowd laughing at the auction, of the vulture wings circling above. Worthless. Trash. Nothing. Yet now, one voice stood against them all. Calm. Simple. Unshaken. You are not nothing. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she turned her face into the cloak, hiding her sobs. Her body shook, but the sound of his slow breathing filled the room, grounding her. For the first time in many suns, she was not in a cage, not tied, not starved. She was free to close her eyes. The fire burned low, shadows stretching across the walls. The vultures outside gave up their cries. For tonight at least, she would not be theirs. And slowly, wrapped in a stranger's cloak, warmed by food and fire and guarded by a man she did not understand, the worthless slave fell asleep. And in that first night, something fragile but powerful took root inside her. The first seed of trust. Morning light spilled through the cracks in the wooden walls. The alien girl stirred, her eyes opening slowly. For a moment she thought it was a dream. Warmth on her skin, a blanket under her, no cage, no cold iron bars. But when she turned her head, she saw him, the human, already awake, sitting by the fire, sharpening a tool with steady hands. His eyes lifted briefly, meeting hers, calm and unreadable. "You should eat," he said, placing a small loaf of bread and a cup of warm broth on the table. The girl sat up carefully, clutching the cloak he had given her the night before. Her body was still weak, her mind still restless. But hunger pushed her forward. She took the food with trembling hands, whispering, "Thank you." The man only nodded, then stood, slipping on his coat. "We need supplies," he said. "Come with me." Her heart thumped, fear rising again. Outside meant eyes, strangers, whispers. She had lived her whole life under those whispers, sharp as knives. Still, she followed him, her steps quiet, her eyes lowered. The village was small but busy, filled with aliens of many shapes and colors. Stalls lined the streets, smoke rose from chimneys, children played by dusty roads. And then it began, the whispers. "That's the human," one voice hissed. "He took the worthless girl from the market." "What is he thinking? She is cursed," another spat. "She will bring him nothing but trouble," someone muttered. The girl felt their stares on her skin like burning coals. Her breath quickened, her hands shook. She pulled the cloak tighter, wishing she could vanish. She waited for him, for the human, to push her forward, to laugh with them, to prove her fears right. But he didn't. His steps never slowed, his head never turned. He walked through the crowd as if their words were no more than the buzzing of flies. Still, the whispers grew louder. "Maybe he bought her for other things," a cruel voice suggested, followed by ugly laughter. The girl's cheeks burned, shame crushing her chest. She wanted to run, to hide, to dig into the earth and disappear. But then, his voice cut through the noise, low but firm. "Ignore them." She looked up at him in shock. His gaze stayed forward, sharp and steady. His hand brushed her shoulder lightly, guiding her onward, not with force, but with reassurance. For a heartbeat, the whispers faded, not because they stopped, but because his presence shielded her from them. They reached the supply stall, an old alien merchant grumbling as he weighed grain. "Strange choice, human," he muttered, eyeing the girl. "You could have bought strength, beauty, skill. Yet you waste your coin on this one." The girl flinched, ready for the human to agree, to shrug and laugh. But instead, the man's voice came, calm and clear. "I did not waste anything." The merchant stared, confused, but said nothing more. The girl's heart pounded. His words echoed in her mind, stronger than the whispers. "I did not waste anything." On the way back, the whispers followed them, but her steps grew steadier. Her eyes lifted once, daring to meet the gaze of those who mocked her. They sneered, but she no longer shrank as small, because beside her walked someone who did not bend to their scorn. When they returned to the shelter, she sank into the chair by the fire, tears filling her eyes. She pressed a hand to her chest, whispering to herself, "Why? Why does he not care what they say?" The human placed the supplies on the table, glancing at her briefly. His answer was as steady as always. "Because they are wrong." Her breath caught, her tears spilled freely. For the first time in her life, the whispers of others began to lose their power. Outside, the village still buzzed with rumors, still laughed and pointed, but inside, that small home, the alien girl felt something she had never known before, a fragile sense of worth, and for the first time she thought maybe, just maybe, the whispers would not decide her fate. Night fell heavy over the valley. The small shelter glowed faintly with firelight, shadows stretching across the wooden walls. The alien girl lay on the blanket near the fire, clutching the cloak tightly around her small frame. Her eyes refused to close, though her body ached with exhaustion. She kept replaying the whispers from the village in her mind, cruel voices calling her worthless, cursed, yet stronger than those words was the memory of his voice, calm and firm, because they are wrong. That single sentence had silenced her doubts more than 100 cruel whispers ever could. But peace never lasted long in her life, and tonight was no different. The human sat by the table, quietly mending a torn strap, his movements calm, precise, steady as always. But then his head lifted suddenly, his eyes narrowing toward the door. The girl noticed too. The sound of crunching footsteps outside, slow, deliberate, more than one pair. Her breath caught, fear rushing into her chest. The vultures might have flown off, but worse predators had come. The door shuddered, then a voice hissed through the cracks. "Human, open up. We've come for what's ours." The girl's blood turned cold. She recognized the tone. Thieves, or worse, slavers from the market. They wanted her back, not because she was worth anything, but because they hated the idea of losing even a coin to kindness. The human stood slowly, his hand resting on the blade he had sharpened the night before. His eyes remained calm, but his stance shifted. Ready, firm. Another slam shook the door. "Give her up, human. She's nothing. You can't protect trash forever." The girl trembled, her body pressing back against the wall. Her throat closed as tears filled her eyes. She had always been taken, always dragged away, and now it was happening again. But the man's voice broke through, low and unshaken. "She is not yours to take." A harsh laugh answered. "Not yours either, human. Step aside before we break your bones." The door splintered as a heavy boot crashed through, the wood cracked, and 3 dark figures pushed inside, eyes gleaming in the firelight, blades flashing in their hands. The girl gasped, curling into herself, her body trembling. She wanted to scream, to beg, but no sound left her throat. The human stepped forward, blocking their path. His blade in his hand caught the firelight, sharp and steady. The first attacker lunged, swinging wildly. The human moved fast, deflecting the strike, his counter sending the alien crashing into the wall. The second came from the side, snarling, but the human's fist met his jaw, dropping him to the floor. The third hesitated, staring at the calm, unshaken figure before him. "She's nothing, human. Worthless. Why risk your life for her?" he spat. The man's answer was simple, sharp as steel. "Because she is not nothing." Then he struck, the clash of metal echoing through the small room. The fight was fierce but short, and soon the attackers stumbled back through the broken door, dragging their wounded with them. "You'll regret this, human," one shouted into the night. "No one defies the market." Their voices faded into the darkness, leaving only the sound of the crackling fire and the girl's shaky breaths. The human lowered his blade, blood running from a cut across his arm. His chest rose and fell, but his eyes remained calm as always. The girl scrambled forward, tears spilling as she reached him. "You're hurt," she cried, her voice breaking. He looked down at her, his expression softening just slightly. "It's nothing," he said, though the wound bled freely. She pressed the cloak to his arm, her small hands trembling. Her tears dripped onto the fabric. "You could have let them take me. You should have. I am not worth this." But he placed his hand over hers, steady and warm. "You are," he said simply. The fire crackled softly in the corner of the shelter, its glow washing over the broken door and scattered pieces of wood. The human sat on a chair, his shirt sleeve torn, blood still dripping slowly down his arm. He acted as if the wound was nothing, but the girl's wide eyes followed every drop that fell to the floor. Her hands shook as she searched the shelves, finding a strip of cloth, old but clean. She carried it back to him, her steps unsteady. "Let me, please," she whispered, her voice small but urgent. The human glanced at her, calm as always. "It's only a scratch," he said. But he did not pull away when she knelt beside him. Her fingers trembled as she pressed the cloth to his wound. His skin was warm, firm under her touch. She had never cared for anyone before, never been allowed, never been trusted. Now here she was, tending to the man who had bled for her, her throat tightened, tears threatening to fall. "Why?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why risk your life for me? They were right. I am worthless. Nothing." The human's gaze lowered to her, steady and sharp. His voice was quiet, but each word cut through her doubts. "If you were nothing, I would not be here, breathing, after fighting 3 men to protect you." Her breath caught. Her hands froze on his arm. His words struck deeper than the wound she tried to bind. She looked down quickly, ashamed. "My family said it too. They said I was weak, useless, cursed. They sold me for scraps of food." Her voice cracked, tears falling freely now. "They left me to rot, and the market laughed. Everyone laughed." Her sobs shook her thin shoulders. The cloth slipped from her hands, but the human caught it, holding her hand steady against his wound. "Then they were blind," he said, his tone like stone, unmovable. "They could not see your worth, but I do." The girl's heart pounded. She lifted her eyes to his, searching for mockery, for lies, but found none. Only calm, unshaken truth. Her lips trembled. "Worth?" she whispered, as if the word itself was strange on her tongue. He nodded once, his expression firm. "You are alive. You endured hunger, cruelty, and shame, and yet here you are, still breathing, still standing. That is strength. That is worth." Her tears streamed harder, but not only from pain. For the first time, she felt her chest open, a small light breaking through the heavy chains of despair. She finished tying the cloth around his arm, her hand steadier now. She pressed it firmly, then leaned back, wiping her face with the edge of the cloak. The human flexed his arm slightly, testing the bandage. "Good," he said simply. "You did well." The words warmed her more than the fire. Praise. Not mockery, not scorn, but simple, honest praise. She whispered back, "I only did what I could." His eyes softened just a little. "That is enough." The room grew quiet, the fire dimming, but the silence between them no longer felt heavy. She looked at him, her voice fragile. "No one ever needed me before." The human leaned back, resting, his eyes closing briefly. "I do," he said calmly, as if it were the most ordinary truth in the world. Her breath stopped, her chest tightened, her fingers clutched the cloak until her knuckles turned white. For so long she had been a burden, a joke, a curse. But tonight, sitting beside a wounded man who still looked stronger than anyone she had ever known, she felt something new rise in her heart. "Belonging," she whispered, almost too soft to hear. Then, "I will stay." The human did not answer. His breathing slowed as sleep began to pull at him, but a faint curve touched his lips, the closest thing to a smile she had seen. And the girl, who once believed herself worthless, pressed her hand against the bandage she had tied. Her heart whispering a vow, she would not leave him, not after he gave her worth, not after he gave her life back. For in that small shelter, on that quiet night, the bond between human and alien was no longer just kindness. It had become something unbreakable, a bond of trust, blood, and hope. Days passed in the valley. Each morning the human rose early to work, chopping wood, mending tools, or hunting for food. The alien girl stayed close, helping where she could, fetching water, grinding herbs, or tending the fire. Her body grew stronger with every meal, her steps steadier, her voice less afraid, but her heart, that still carried scars deeper than any wound. At night, she sometimes woke from dreams of the marketplace, the laughter of strangers, the harsh voice of her family calling her worthless. The human never asked about her nightmares, but he always kept the fire burning, a quiet flame that told her she was not alone. She began to believe this life could last, a fragile hope building inside her. But hope is fragile because the past always knows how to return. It was midday when it happened. The girl was outside, hanging cloth to dry in the sun, when shadows fell across the path. Her hands froze. The sound of voices reached her ears, voices she knew too well. "Is that her?" a harsh voice sneered. "The one we sold at the market?" Her heart stopped. Slowly she turned, and there they were, her own kin, The family who had once called her nothing. They looked healthier than she remembered, dressed in better clothes, carrying full packs of goods. But their eyes were the same, cold, sharp, filled with greed. The human stepped out of the shelter, his hand resting on the axe at his side, his gaze steady, his body calm. The tallest of the family stepped forward, smirking. "Human, you have something that belongs to us." He pointed at the girl. "She is ours. We sold her cheap, yes, but we didn't think she would survive. Seems we were wrong." The girl's breath came fast. Her legs shook. Her voice caught in her throat. "No, please," she whispered. Another relative, a woman with hard eyes, hissed, "You think you can keep her? She is weak, but she has value now. People whisper about her, and value always brings coin. Hand her back and we will forgive your foolishness." The human did not move. His voice came low and firm. "She is not for sale." The family laughed cruelly. "Not for sale? Everything is for sale, human. Even worthless things have a price." The girl's chest tightened, shame burning her cheeks. She wanted to vanish, to sink into the ground, yet at the same time she felt the heat of the human's words shield her. "She is not yours," he said again, his voice sharper this time. "You abandoned her. You left her to die. She is not going back to you." The tallest man's smile twisted. "Careful, human. You are alone here. You bleed once, you will bleed again. Do you think you can fight us all?" The girl stepped forward then, her voice trembling. "Please, don't. I'll go. If I return, they won't hurt you." Her eyes filled with tears. Her chest ached. She was ready to sacrifice herself as she always had. But the human's hand rose, stopping her. His eyes never left the family. "You are not going anywhere," he said firmly. "Not back to them. Not ever." The family sneered, muttering threats, promising they would return with more. Then they turned and left, their laughter carrying down the path like a curse. The girl fell to her knees, sobbing into her hands. "Why? Why would you defy them? They will bring more. They will not stop." The human knelt beside her, placing his hand on her shoulder, steady as stone. "Let them come," he said. "I will not give you back. You are not theirs. You are not nothing." Her tears spilled harder, but this time they were not only from fear, they were from the truth of his words. For the first time, she felt something stronger than fear in her chest. She felt the beginnings of belonging. And though her family's shadow hung heavy in the air, she realized she was no longer the worthless slave they had abandoned. She was someone the human had chosen, someone worth protecting, and that changed everything. The next day brought no peace. The air itself felt heavy, as if the valley held its breath. The alien girl stayed close to the shelter, her hands trembling as she tried to grind herbs into powder. Her mind could not escape the memory of her family's eyes. Greedy, cold, and filled with power. She had once prayed they would come back for her, long ago when she was young. She had dreamed of hearing them say they wanted her. But yesterday's meeting had shattered the last of those hopes. They did not come because they loved her. They came because the human gave her worth, and now they would not stop. By evening, her fears proved true. The sound of footsteps and voices echoed down the path again, more than before, louder, stronger. The human stepped outside, his hand brushing the axe at his belt, calm but ready. The girl followed him to the doorway, her heart beating fast. And then she saw them, her family. But not only them, 2 merchants from the market walked with them, their faces smug. The tallest of her kin stepped forward, his voice smooth. "Human, we are reasonable. We don't want trouble. We only want what is ours." He waved a pouch heavy with coins, the sound of credits clinking sharp in the silence. "Take this, and give the girl back, more than what you paid, 10 times more. You walk away richer and wiser." The girl's knees shook, her stomach twisted. She waited for the human's answer, terror clawing at her chest. What if he takes it, she thought. What if he gives me back? Her whole life had taught her one truth. People chose coins over her, always. The human stood tall, his gaze fixed on the man. His voice was calm but carried like though. "Ender. She is not for sale." The crowd murmured in surprise. The merchants laughed sharply. "Don't be a fool, human. She is nothing. She is weak. She will bring you trouble and death." The human did not flinch. His hand rested lightly on the axe, but his eyes never left theirs. "She is not nothing," he said. and she is not yours." The tallest man sneered, shaking the pouch. "You will regret this, human. No one defies the market. No one defies blood. She belongs to us by right." The girl could not hold back her tears. She stepped forward, her voice breaking. "Please, stop. Don't fight for me. I'll go. I don't want you hurt." Her words cracked the air like glass. The human turned his head slightly, his eyes meeting hers. His voice softened, steady as stone. "You are not going anywhere." Her chest tightened. Her tears spilled faster. She wanted to believe, but fear screamed louder. The merchants hissed, spitting on the ground. "You think one human can stand against us? You think kindness will protect you? She will drag you down." The human stepped forward, his voice a blade. "Better to fall protecting her than to rise among those who throw her away." The valley fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. The family's smug smiles faded, replaced by anger, by frustration. They realized no amount of coin, no amount of threats would break this human's choice. At last, the tallest spat, his eyes narrowing. "Then you have chosen your death." They turned, their shadows long against the setting sun, their threats carried into the distance, promising they would return with more. The girl collapsed to her knees, shaking. Her tears streamed as she pressed her hands to her face. "Why? Why do this for me? I am only trouble. I will ruin you." The human knelt before her, his voice low but firm. "You are not ruin. You are the reason I stand. You are not a burden. You are my choice." Her sobs turned to quiet gasps. Her heart broke and healed at once. For the first time, someone had chosen her not out of pity, not for coin, not for use, but simply because she was worth choosing. And though the shadow of her family still lingered, though danger still circled like vultures, she felt a strength grow inside her. The decision had been made, and it was final. She was no longer a slave, no longer worthless. She was his, not as property, but as someone seen, someone valued, someone protected, and nothing, not family, not merchants, not the market itself, could take that away. The valley was quiet again, but the silence carried weight. The alien girl sat near the fire, her knees pulled to her chest. Her eyes were swollen from crying, yet inside her a storm still raged. She could not stop replaying the moment. The pouch of coins, her family's sneering faces, and the human's voice cutting through them all. "She is not for sale." Those words burned brighter than the fire. They felt impossible, unreal. For her whole life she had been passed from hand to hand like a broken tool, her worth measured in scraps, until even scraps were too much. But he, a stranger, a human, had turned down more wealth than she had ever seen. He had chosen her instead. That choice shook her world. The human sat across from her, calmly repairing the broken door with new wood, his movement steady, precise, as if nothing had happened, as if he had not just declared war on her past. She watched him in silence. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her voice finally breaking the stillness. "Why?" she whispered, almost too soft to hear. "Why would you do this for me? You could have taken the coins. You could have been free of me." The man paused, lifting his head. His gaze met hers, steady and sharp. "Because coins mean nothing," he said. "But you mean something." Her lips trembled. She shook her head, tears rising again. I don't understand. I was nothing to everyone, even to my own family." The human set down the ham. Murr, standing slowly, he crossed the small room and knelt before her. His hand rested gently on her shoulder. "They were wrong," he said firmly. "They could not see your worth, but I can, and I will not let them decide your fate again." Her tears spilled freely. She pressed her hands to her face, shaking with the weight of emotions she had never known. Her voice cracked as she whispered, no one ever wanted me. Until you." The human's hand stayed steady, his voice calm. "Then remember this. You are wanted now. You are chosen now. Not for what you can do, not for what you can give, but simply for who you are." The words sank deep into her, like water into dry earth. For the first time in her life, she believed she might not be worthless. The firelight flickered across the walls, shadows dancing like silent witnesses to the moment. She lowered her hands, her eyes red but shining with something new. Hope, fragile but alive. Slowly, Carefully, she leaned forward, her small frame trembling. She pressed her forehead against his chest, clutching the cloak tightly around her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking, "for seeing me, for saving me." The human said nothing, but his hand rested gently on her back, strong and steady, a silent promise. Outside, the night was deep, the vultures circling high above, waiting for weakness. But inside that small shelter, the girl was no longer prey, no longer abandoned, no longer a worthless slave. She had been given something greater than food, greater than safety. She had been given dignity, she had been given worth, and with it, her world changed forever. She was not nothing, she was someone, and she would never forget the human who made her believe it.